Hey guys, it's Ellie. Welcome back to Bite-Sized Book of Mormon. I'm glad to have you with me. So, if you've never been here before, this is just a podcast where I read one chapter of the Book of Mormon each episode, and I provide a little bit of context, a little bit of insight, a little bit of good times. So, stick around. So, if you remember last episode, we read Helaman chapter 2, which is a pretty short chapter, but very, very important because we're introduced to this person named Gadianton. And if you remember, Kishkumen had a whole secret murdery band in the chapter before, but in Helaman 2, Gadianton takes over. Kishkumen is killed in an effort to get Gadianton in power, and so now Gadianton is properly in charge of what used to be Kishkumen's murder band. And now, who knows what they're gonna do, right? Kishkumen was killed by a righteous servant of Helaman, but Gadianton is still around. So, anyways, let's see what kind of shenanigans they get up to in Helaman chapter 3. And now it came to pass in the 43rd year of the reign of the judges, there was no contention among the people of Nephi, save it were a little pride which was in the church, which did cause some little dissensions among the people, which affairs were settled in the ending of the 43rd year. And there was no contention among the people in the 44th year, neither was there much contention in the 45th year. And it came to pass in the 46th, yea, there was much contention and many dissensions, in the which there were an exceedingly great many who departed out of the land of Zarahemla, and went forth unto the land northward to inherit the land. And they did travel to an exceedingly great distance, insomuch that they came to large bodies of water and many rivers. Yea, and even they did spread forth into all parts of the land, into whatever parts it had not been rendered desolate and without timber, because of the many inhabitants who had before inherited the land. And now no part of the land was desolate save it were for timber, but because of the greatness of the destruction of the people who had before inhabited the land, it was called desolate. And there being but little timber upon the face of the land, nevertheless, the people who went forth became exceedingly expert in the working of cement, therefore they did build houses of cement in the which they did dwell. And it came to pass that they did multiply and spread, and did go forth from the land southward to the land northward, and did spread insomuch that they began to cover the face of the whole earth, from the sea south to the sea north, from the sea west to the sea east. And the people who were in the land northward did dwell in tents, and in houses of cement, and they did suffer whatsoever tree should spring up upon the face of the land, that it should grow up, and in time they might have timber to build their houses, yea, and their cities, and their temples, and their synagogues, and their sanctuaries, and all manner of their buildings. Fun fact, they talk a lot about cement in this chapter, as I'm sure you've noticed. They live in cement houses because of the lack of trees in the land northward where they're going to run away from people that they politically disagree with, or people that they don't like. I don't know. It just says that they leave because they're prideful. Who knows? But what's interesting is that for a very long time, people assumed this is an anachronism, right? There's a lot of those claimed in the Book of Mormon, and this was one of many at the time. But now, according to further research, it's actually accurate. Like, there are Mesoamerican cities that have cement in the 1st century BC, which is when this was. So cement was accurate. They would have had it and used it to build cities already, which is really cool. And obviously it's made clear in the section that they prefer to build things with wood, but because there were no trees, they had to build with cement. So anyways, it's an interesting little side note, little tangent that just mentions, well, yeah, they had cement, they went north, yada yada, you know? And I think that Mormon kept it in, I don't know, maybe because he knew that it would eventually become some sort of internal evidence, because that's kind of what it serves now. So anyways, yeah, we aren't sure why Mormon kept it in, but we are sure that there was cement. So that's pretty neat. Anyways, another thing that I want to talk about is how after Kishkumen was killed, there's a lot of peace. And I think that's almost dangerous, because again, we know that Gadianton has a band of robbers and murderers and plunderers at his beck and call in Zarahemla. And they're biding their time. They're waiting for the right moment to strike. And that's terrifying. I don't know if the authority in Zarahemla is aware of that fact, which makes it even more scary. So peace is a good thing, and it is a good thing that people are not getting killed, but it is a bad thing that there remains an unchecked threat within the walls of Zarahemla. So anyways, hopefully they don't rear their ugly head in this chapter. They probably will, all things considered, who knows. But also it's interesting that the first couple verses mention that there's some pride in the church and that those people left to the land northward, and then it gets talking about cement. But the fact that they left, I think, is actually a very good thing, because they're separate. And instead of inciting a civil war or leaving to the Lamanites and inciting a international war, they just left. Like, that's the best outcome. I don't need everyone to agree, but I need everyone to live in peace despite their differences. And if that includes moving away, then yes, do that. I'm not saying that the prideful Nephites that moved were right to be prideful, but I am saying they were right to not incite violence because of it. So, anyways, semi-good thing that they moved away, who knows? But this is a 37-verse chapter, so we already know that that is not going to last. So anyways, let's see what goes on next. And it came to pass, as timber was exceedingly scarce in the land northward, they did send forth much by the way of shipping. And thus they did enable the people in the land northward that they might build many cities, both of wood and of cement. And it came to pass that there were many of the people of Ammon, who were Lamanites by birth, did also go forth into this land. And now there are many records kept of the proceedings of this people by many of this people, which are particular and very large concerning them. But behold, 100th part of the proceedings of this people, yea, the account of the Lamanites and of the Nephites, and of their wars and contentions and dissensions, and their preachings and their prophecies, and their shipping, and their building of ships, and their building of temples, and of synagogues, and their sanctuaries, and their righteousness, and their wickedness, and their murders, and their robbings, and their plunderings, and all manner of abomination and whoredoms, cannot be contained in this work. But behold, there are many books and many records of every kind, and they have been kept chiefly by the Nephites. And they have been handed down from one generation to another by the Nephites, even until they have fallen into transgression and have been murdered, plundered, and hunted, and driven forth, and slain, and scattered upon the face of the earth, and mixed with the Lamanites until they are no more called Nephites, becoming wicked and wild and ferocious, yea, even becoming Lamanites. And now I return again to mine account. Therefore, what I have spoken had passed after there had been great contentions and disturbances and wars and dissensions among the people of Nephi. The 46th year of the reign of the judges ended. And it came to pass that there was still great contention in the land, yea, even in the 47th year, and also in the 48th. Nevertheless, Helaman did fill the judgment seat with justice and equity, yea, he did observe to keep the statutes and the judgments and the commandments of God, and he did do that which was right in the sight of God continually, and he did walk after the ways of his father, insomuch that he did prosper in the land. So I'm sad that we don't get to read all that record, right? Verse 14 was that one long verse that was like, there are records that contain the righteousness and the wickedness and the building of temples and of synagogues and of the whoredoms and the murders and all that. We don't have that record, which is so sad. It's one of many verses in the Book of Mormon where Mormon kind of pops his head in and goes, so about this that I'm talking about, there's a lot of documentation about it, a lot of records exist about it, but I'm not going to show those to you because I can't fit them in, so sorry. Oh, it makes me so sad. I cannot wait to, be in heaven and just get to read all the records to my heart's content. Because I believe that, that's going to be an option. Anyways, dude, I want to read the other 99% that Mormon did not get to include because, wow, that would be fascinating. And a lot of it probably would be boring, but it would provide more insight and kind of expand the world of the Nephites in my mind, and that would be super cool. And also, this section gives a little update on Helaman, son of Helaman, who is in the judgment seat, and he also has the records. And Mormon just says, yeah, he was great, he was doing good, he was righteous, followed after the example of his father, and, very importantly, he says, that is why they prospered. So if you remember, in the very beginning of the Book of Mormon, Lehi gets revelation that if they should keep God's commandments, they should prosper in the land. And it is fascinating to me how that one revelation to their ancestral father kind of echoes down hundreds of years later. Like, it's been 550 years, whereabouts, since this revelation was received, and they're still functioning off of it. They're still saying, because he was righteous, because he followed God's commandments, he prospered. They're still alluding to this revelation that Lehi got. That is so cool. How Lehi's revelation has kind of stuck itself into Nephite and Lamanite lore almost, which is so fascinating. So anyways, good times. I love seeing how the story of Lehi and Nephi and Laman and Lemuel has become crystallized in their culture, in their understanding of themselves, in their heritage. And you will see that very clearly in the next verse. And it came to pass that he had 2 sons. He gave unto the eldest the name of Nephi, and unto the youngest the name of Lehi, and they began to grow up unto the Lord. And it came to pass that the wars and contentions began to cease, in a small degree, among the people of the Nephites, in the latter end of the 48th year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi. And it came to pass in the 49th year of the reign of the judges, there was continual peace established in the land, all save it were the secret combinations which Gadianton the robber had established in the more settled parts of the land, which at that time were not known unto those who were head of government, therefore they were not destroyed out of the land. And it came to pass that in this same year there was exceedingly great prosperity in the church, insomuch that there were thousands who did join themselves unto the church and were baptized unto repentance. And so great was the prosperity of the church, and so many the blessings which were poured out upon the people, that even the high priests and the teachers were themselves astonished beyond all measure. And it came to pass that the work of the Lord did prosper unto the baptizing and uniting to the church of God many souls, yea, even tens of thousands. So this is a strange time for the Nephites, because the section that we just read kind of emphasizes the complete juxtaposition of things. There is a murderous band of robbers that have hidden themselves in the city led by Gadianton. They still exist, and it says specifically, the government doesn't know about them. So they're extra dangerous, and at the same time, they're dormant, because the church is growing massively. People are prosperous, probably because, their chief judge is a good guy, and so they tend to be better people under a righteous leader. So anyways, tens of thousands of people are getting baptized. Good things. People are coming to Christ. It's amazing. But at the same time, this insidious band of secret brethren, you might say, are hiding among the people and waiting on their next time to strike. So again, amazing things are happening in the church. They're growing so much. People are coming to Christ. Wow, it's awesome. But Gadianton is still there. And so there's still danger. And the worst part about it is that no one knows about it, which makes it exponentially more dangerous because they can't defend against something they don't know about. So anyways, I hope this doesn't end bad. I don't read these chapters ahead of time, so I actually can't remember off the top of my head. So yeah, we shall see. If this prosperity lasts, I really don't think it will, because it rarely does for the Nephites. Thus we may see that the Lord is merciful unto all who will, in the sincerity of their hearts, call upon his holy name. Yea, thus we see that the gate of heaven is open unto all, even to those who will believe on the name of Jesus Christ, who is the Son of God. Yea, we see that whosoever will may lay hold upon the word of God, which is quick and powerful, which shall divide asunder all the cunning and the snares and the wiles of the devil, and lead the man of Christ in a straight and narrow course across that everlasting gulf of misery which is prepared to engulf the wicked. And land their souls, yea, their immortal souls, at the right hand of God in the kingdom of heaven, to sit down with Abraham and Isaac, and with Jacob, and with all our holy fathers, to go no more out. And in this year there was continual rejoicing in the land of Zarahemla, and in all the regions round about, even in all the land which was possessed by the Nephites. And it came to pass that there was peace and exceedingly great joy in the remainder of the 49th year, yea, and also there was continual peace and great joy in the 50th year of the reign of the judges. Guys, if you're familiar with the Pride Cycle, you will know what's coming next. To give you a brief summary of the Pride Cycle, it's something that exists in the Book of Mormon that the Nephites kind of go through a cycle. They start living their lives, then they start to get really prosperous because, wow, they're being really righteous and God is blessing them because, yippee, they're living their lives well. And then because of that prosperity, they buy really expensive clothes, they show off their wealth, they show off their prosperity, then they get prideful and they get more separate from God and they think, oh, we don't need God, we have all this stuff. And then God chastises them, whether that's by, making some natural disaster happen or bringing the armies of the Lamanites, what have you. They're humbled, they come back to God, they become righteous again, and then wow, because they're righteous, they get prosperous. So anyways, it's this pride cycle that you should be very familiar with when you read through the Book of Mormon, and we are seeing all the signs that we are just before they tip into that pride. They're very prosperous, they're, very happy, they're living good lives, and they're rich. They're doing well for themselves. And that doesn't always lead to pride, but it very easily can. So these past few verses that talk about their prosperity should be ringing alarm bells in your mind that this is about to change. And in the 51st year of the reign of the judges, there was peace also, save it were the pride which began to enter into the church, not into the church of God, but into the hearts of the people who professed to belong to the church of God. and they were lifted up in pride even to the persecution of many of their brethren. Now this was a great evil, which did cause the more humble part of the people to suffer great persecutions and to wade through much affliction. Nevertheless, they did fast and pray oft, and did wax stronger and stronger in their humility, and firmer in the faith of Christ, unto the filling their souls with joy and consolation, yea, even to the purifying and the sanctification of their hearts, which sanctification cometh because of their yielding their hearts unto God. And it came to pass that the 52nd year ended in peace also, save it were the exceedingly great pride which had gotten into the hearts of the people, and it was because of their exceedingly great riches and their prosperity in the land, and it did grow upon them from day to day. And it came to pass, in the 53rd year of the reign of the judges, Helaman died, and his eldest son Nephi began to reign in his stead. And it came to pass that he did fill the judgment seat with justice and equity, yea, he did keep the commandments of God, and did walk in the ways of his father. So just as the pride cycle predicted, yeah, they led into pride. They let that kind of take them over, and even to the point where they would persecute other members of the same church, which isn't great. And it's this kind of pride and persecution that is the most harmful because it comes from inside. But what I think is really cool about this is that, yes, there were people that kind of let the pride take over, but there was also a core group of humble members of the Church of God, and instead of receiving the persecution from the wicked ones and being like, wow, this sucks, I don't have to deal with this, like, this is the worst. If the Church of God were real, no one in the church would be imperfect at all, no one would be doing this to us, we're being mistreated in such a rude way, like, this is really bad. No, they don't do that, even though the persecution is coming from within their own church, which has got to sting so much more than if an outsider were to throw it at them. And yet, these humble people turn to God. They pray more, they fast more, they're firmer in the faith, and that is because, the very end of verse 35 says, they yielded their hearts to God. That is cool. That the prideful Nephites surrounding them acted like a refiner's fire for these humble saints among the Nephites. They didn't allow this awful persecution and this rudeness coming from their own peers to dissuade them from the fact that God's church is real, even if it's filled with imperfect people. They didn't hold the actions of their peers in their same church against God. They seemingly kept that separate. And again, they used the persecution to come closer to God. They didn't retract themselves. They leaned in even more, which is inspiring and beautiful. And good for them, because the prideful Nephites probably aren't going to do so well. So the standout verse for this chapter is going to be verse 27, which says, "Thus we may see that the Lord is merciful unto all who will, in the sincerity of their hearts, call upon his holy name." So what this verse is saying is that God gives mercy and grace to anyone who will but call on his name. This doesn't even specify baptism, it doesn't specify orthodoxy or orthopraxy, it doesn't specify anything but that they call on his name. And, of course, that they do it sincerely, which is, I think, implied. But isn't that beautiful? God doesn't need us to be perfect. God doesn't need us to know all the lingo, or to be in the community, or to even be baptized. But for the first steps, all God needs is for us to call on his name, to seek for his help, to raise our hand in worship, but also in humility, asking for divine aid and support and comfort with sincerity. And of course, there are more things that we do to show our love to God, to walk further on that covenant path. You know, baptism, sacrament, all the temple ordinances. Yes, those are very important. But the first thing that God asks you for is not baptism. It's not even going to church. It is calling on his holy name in sincerity. That's beautiful to me. There are new beginnings every single day. And so if you feel like you've fallen behind, even if you have covenants with God in the temple, turn to him, call on his holy name, and he will extend mercy and grace to anyone who wants it. So, yeah, that is such a beautiful and merciful principle that we're learning here. So anyways, I hope you take that to heart, because I definitely need to, a little bit better. So, there you go. But yeah, that is the episode for today. I hope you enjoyed. This is a really interesting chapter because it balances, like I said, the fear and the looming danger of the Gadianton robbers with the prosperity. And the problem, the contention in this chapter doesn't come from the literal murderers that are in the Gadianton robbers, but it comes from people's own pride, which I think also can teach us something. So anyways, yeah, good times. So the link's down in the show notes. There's just a Linktree link that you can click on to find everything. You can contact me, you can find my YouTube and my Instagram where I post all my content, which is a lot of fun, and you can find the podcast website, etc., etc. There's also a link where you can donate to me if you feel like it. So anyways, yeah, go ahead and click that down below to find everything that I have. So anyways, yeah, that is all I've got for you today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.